All right, let's get started before Dr. Krako gets here, because we know he won't come till 10. Right? Is that right, Doc? Okay. All right. All right, how's everybody doing?
We're wonderful.
Good.
Is it the 11th?
It's the 11th.
I know, that's why I switched.
You're so sweet. I mean, I appreciate that a lot. I really do. Because I just lose.
They're cozy chairs, though. Crochet them on.
You're saying they're better?
Than the other ones? I don't know. They're just a little, like, cushier.
Yeah, they are.
Thank you again. It's
Okay.
very nice. Very nice.
All right.
All right.
Individual Providence. 108.
108.
Anybody who doesn't have a bookmark?
I don't have a bookmark.
So how do you know?
Picture.
No. My bookmark's over there somewhere.
Why
Well
does
then, I'll know for next week that you won't know the place.
Why does it matter whether there's a bookmark or not?
I didn't look.
Because it would be good if people were able to actually figure out what we were up to based on looking at it, and not at bookmarks or pictures from last week.
That would require us to open the book more than just when we're here, and you told us not to read ahead, so.
I didn't say anything about reading ahead.
Oh, really?
I've not still. No, I'm saying I still haven't said to read ahead. You
I
could
can read ahead.
No, you can't read ahead.
See? You're saying I can't read ahead.
Correct.
So
What does that
why?
have to do with knowing where we're up to?
Because that's how, like, when I review.
No, if you were to
something-
read ahead,
opening the
then
book.
you definitely would not know where we're up to. Because then you'd be ahead and you wouldn't know where we're up to. Knowing where we're up to would require either A, paying attention during class,
Yeah.
or B, reviewing. Those are two options. Oh, come on, Gail.
Dang.
Being a party pooper here, I'm trying to knock on all these people who aren't paying attention.
What was that you said?
Yeah. All right. Here we go. Yeah, so we are in, what page is that? 108, 109? 110? 110. Page 110. 110. Okay, so, last week we talked about how the individual system works similar to the more general global system, and that everything that happens within a person's life is by design. Everything that happens is for the sole purpose of getting a person to achieve. You can't hear me. Oh, do I have to sign into the audio? Sorry, my bad. Sorry about that. Okay.
Can't read lips.
Apparently not very well. Maybe you should wake up. Okay. So.
Get the man some coffee.
Coffee, that's right. That's every sleep doctor's dream. All right, so so we were talking about how if a person encounters anything in life, they need to understand that that is by design, and that is there for the purpose of helping them achieve what they need to achieve in life. So this is true of every aspect. It's true of finances. It's true of circumstances. It's true of relationships. It's true of every encounter that we have in life. All of that is designed to give us the setup and the opportunities that we need to be able to have the growth that we can thereby accomplish the task that Hashem has set before us in life. And he mentioned that all of that happens up in the koiches. It happens up in those spiritual places, and all of those things then trickle down to here, And it's that system that runs the global events. That same system runs the personal, private events. So as much as we like to think about how the earthquake, right? The earthquake that happens in South Africa, that was a 5, right? So the level 5 earthquake in South Africa yesterday, that we can easily.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Appreciate it.
So it's easy to understand that big natural events like that are designed from the kaiches. They start up on the spiritual design, schematics, and they come down into this world and they happen. So that's much easier to understand. But what he's saying here is that it's not limited to that. But every interaction that we have, every little thing that happens to each and every one of us on a personal level is also sourced in those kaiches. It also happens up in those spiritual realms before it comes down and happens to every one of us. So it's not just a global thing, it's not just a world thing, but it's a personal thing as well. Everything that we experience all starts in the kaiches and continues from there. It comes down. It comes down.
Spreads all around the globe.
Well, it goes, no, each one of the kaiches has certain aspects it has to influence. So the kaiches, you'll have one that's covering, all of the happiness, and that's going to go to all the different places it needs to go to. And you've got one that handles all of the sadness. That's going to come out in all the places it needs to go to, and each one of those is going to be designed to take effect for this individual person in this way. So the person who's supposed to be getting X level of happiness, their favorite team is going to win the championship, and that's going to be part of the design for getting this person that level of happiness.
So, is it like a fuel pump, and like each focus has its own fuel pump coming down? Is it continuously going, or is it like, does it every 24 hours, like
Okay, good question.
a new plan, or is it continuous already coming down, knowing the plan for forever? Like, does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So it seems that, and I'm hoping he's going to get into this more later, but we said a while ago that the kaiches are what makes things happen, and then the malachim make sure that those continue. The kaiches are these supernal forces that are the design for everything that needs to happen in this world. And everything that happens down here starts up there. And then what happens is the malachim create the continuity for those things. So I'm hoping he's going to explain that more, but it seems like the kaiches, whenever something needs to happen, the kaiches make it happen, and then the effects of that are carried on through the malachim.
So it's like a continual, forces are continually coming down, new pieces.
Every time
of it.
something needs to happen, the kaich makes that happen. Right. Okay.
Busy entity.
Oh yeah, lots of them. Right? You said there's tons of them. No.
They don't need coffee.
Mm-mm. Not that it would hurt, but okay. Okay. All right. So we ready to continue?
Yep.
Okay. So continuing our review. So we said that the way this works, the way it plays out, it can play out in, for the example that he starts off with is wealth. Somebody has a lot of wealth, so that is a test for them. What's that going to do to them? Are they going to, hold on, Doc, I'm going to mute you. I don't really care if you're offended either. Mute. Oh, I can't mute you. Doc, can you mute yourself, please? Are you even listening? Are you even here? Oh, there you go. Thank you. The example he gives is if you have wealthy people and poor people. So we said that the purpose of the whole wealthy and poor thing is that it's a test. The test for the wealthy, what's it going to do to them? Are they going to become conceited and it's going to become, this is my doing, I'm in charge, I'm the reason for my success, etc., etc.? And are they going to look down on people who aren't wealthy? Are they going to use their wealth for the right purposes or not? It's all a test. On the other hand, you have poor people. The poor people are there, A, to facilitate the test for the wealthy people, and B, they themselves are being tested. How are they going to react to their situation in life? Because it's also very easy to become close to Hashem if you're not wealthy, because you're kind of naturally inclined to turn to Hashem because nothing else is working. But at the same time, there are plenty of people who unfortunately go through hard times and they turn away from Hashem and they blame Hashem and they say, forget it. If this is what I get, then I'm leaving, right? And they think they can leave. Right, yeah, but it's the kind of thing that can certainly happen, and it needs to be all understood that it's all a test. It's all a test. That's how everything works. An example would be Rebbe. I don't know if we mentioned Rebbe last week. Rebbe Yehuda Anasi, when he died, before he died, he raised his hands to Hashem and said, Hashem, you alone can testify that these 10 fingers never took pleasure from this world. Now understand, Rebbe was fabulously wealthy, like extreme wealth. He was the political leader of the Jewish people, and he was a very close friend and confidant of the Caesar. So, like, he had everything. He led the Jewish people, he was politically extremely high up, and he had fabulous wealth. And yet he said he didn't benefit from this world. Meaning a person can have wealth, fabulous wealth, and success in every way, all kinds of success, and still understand everything is from Hashem, everything has a purpose. I'm not here to indulge. It's not why I'm here. He said Shabbos, obviously you're supposed to, but that's not you. That's what you're doing for Shabbos. So a person can have wealth and pass that test. Now another example, I was just talking to somebody yesterday. Somebody came over to my house yesterday, and we were schmoozing for half an hour about Herman Friedman. Herman Friedman was the perfect example of how to live with wealth. He never spent on himself, ever, for anything. Even things that all of us would consider needs, he wouldn't. And he gave and gave and gave and gave and gave and gave. He refused to let anybody know who it was coming from. He refused to even find out who he was giving to. I would come to him, I would say, there is somebody, this is what they need. He didn't want to know their name. He didn't want to know, he wanted to know the situation. He didn't want to know their name, their background. He just wrote the check. And he said, just make sure they don't know where it's coming from. And he didn't know who they were. And these were people who he might even see every day. He would never know, and he didn't want to know. He'd start asking questions, and he'd get to a point, and he'd say, oh, I don't want to ask any more because I might figure out who it is. You're talking about somebody who gave all day, literally gave by tens of thousands of dollars at a time. Giving out constantly. And that's the way to live with wealth, the way Hashem wants. He viewed himself as a messenger of Hashem to give out money to people who need it. And that's exactly what he did his whole life. That's what he did. He opened an entire office for the Russians who came over from the Soviet Union. He opened an office for them so they could all have jobs. You know? Next level. So yeah, there are people who can pass the test of wealth. There are. Not common, but it can happen. All right. So. All right, so here we go. V'amnam. Chilka ha'chachma ha'alyayna es mine ha'nisayon ha'eleh ben ishe min ha'anaysin. Hashem had to divide all the different types of tests amongst all the different types of people. Based on the way that would be the most appropriate for every individual in order to accomplish their specific goals and what is necessary for them in life. V'nimtza l'chol ish v'ish b'nei adam. So that means what comes out is that for every single individual, for every single person, chelek miyuchad b'nisayin l'chamas hayetzer. Every single person has a specific part, a specific portion of this test, and in the battle with the Yetzer Hara. Everybody's unique. V'hu b'kudasai u'masai ba'olam hazeh. And this is, meaning this manifests itself in the way a person needs to go through life with his path in life, his burden, all the troubles that come along, all the opportunities that come along, all of that is the manifestation of the test. All the things that happen around us, to us, about us, all of that is the package of the test that's specific and unique for us. V'yudnu ma'asav b'midas dina yisbarach kifi hamasa asher nitan le be'emes. And his actions will be judged by Hashem based on the burden that he has in truth. V'chol b'chinaisav b'tachlis hadikta, because all of the different elements of it, down to the smallest detail. Meaning to say, and this is a very, very important fundamental piece of knowledge in Judaism, and that is that every judgment that Hashem makes, and He's the only one who can make judgments, every single judgment is entirely, completely subjective. Every single bit of it. Meaning, when every single thing that we're judged on, which is everything that we do, everything about that is taken into account. Our mood, our level of tiredness, you're welcome, Doc, our interactions with the people around us that happened the day before, our frustrations, our upbringing, our financial state, the health of our loved ones. All of these things come into play when it comes to our making decisions. And all of that's taken into account. Because Hashem obviously is putting all of that where it is, and He's using all of that to create the situation that we need to be tested in. So once the whole test has been set, then a proper judgment can be made. So all of the circumstances that come into all of our decisions are all taken into account for the judgment of those decisions. So you could have two people who are doing the same thing, and they'll be judged very differently. Because for one person, based on their circumstances, what they did was the wrong thing. And for the other person, based on their circumstances, what they did was not unexpected and was considered in line with the way things were going for them at that time. So it's important to understand that every aspect is taken into account in Hashem's judgment. Okay?
So when we're making those decisions, how do we know which one is right?
When we're making those decisions, how do we know which one is right?
Based on our own.
The answer is that we have a Torah, and the Torah is our guide, and all the answers are found within. Sometimes we ignore that, and we think we can make decisions on our own. Sometimes we know the right decision, and we are too frustrated to make that decision, or too angry, or too whatever, and we don't make that decision. And sometimes we simply don't know what the Torah says, and we choose not to try to find out. So those would be all the reasons we make a wrong decision. But if we follow the Torah, we'd never make a wrong decision. Every single mistake has been because either it was because we weren't following. The question is why. It could be a misunderstanding of the Torah. It could be we didn't think about the Torah. But if you have the Torah is the guide. And everything is right. Okay.
So practically, to answer this question, you have to ask somebody who
If the circumstance is such that you don't know what the Torah says, which is rare, most of us, for most of our decisions, know what the Torah says, But in the rare occasion that we don't, you got to ask. Yeah. But I mean, 90%, maybe more, probably 95% of decisions that we make in our lifetime, we know what the Torah wants. We know the Torah doesn't want us to act out of anger, which accounts for a big chunk of our mistakes. We know the Torah doesn't want us to sleep in when we should be getting up, and I mean that as figuratively as I mean that literally, right? We know that. And that, again, accounts for a big chunk of the mistakes that we make. The Torah definitely doesn't want us to... the Torah doesn't want us to sell ourselves short and think, well, I'm not ready for that if we're not being honest with ourselves, right? We know this. These are things that we know. We're all aware of these things. We just sometimes choose to ignore it or not confront it. So, but yes, there are times where you got to ask. There are times where there are situations where you really don't know what does the Torah want. In this circumstance, you got to ask somebody who you trust to represent the knowledge of Torah. Yeah. Okay. Good?
Yep.
Okay. I should share. I was in Baltimore a bunch of years ago. We were having it was kind of a get-together of a bunch of kollels, the heads of the kollels, 15 different kollels. We got together in Baltimore. We were trying to all recruit from Ner Yisrael, the big yeshiva in Baltimore, trying to get guys to come out to the out-of-town kollels. Unsuccessful, I might add, but we tried. So while we were there, we were fortunate to have some presentations from some very, very prestigious rabbis. And one of them, one of the older rabbis in Baltimore, spoke to us about being a leader in a Jewish community. And you know, he'd been doing it for a very long time. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. No? No guesses?
Well, there's a lot of leaders.
No, been around a long time. A Rav. Old-time Rav.
Okay, I guess.
Okay. Anyway, so he was saying one of the biggest deterrents for people to ask their rabbi questions is that they think in their heads that every time they ask a question, the rabbi is going to therefore judge them on where they're at. And they think, well, if I ask the rabbi this question, he's going to think I'm really dumb, and therefore that's just how he's going to look at me forever, because this is really a stupid question and I should know this. He says that's the biggest deterrent people have to asking questions, and it's all a fallacy. So because the reality is any self-respecting rabbi looks beyond these things when they're dealing with people, because that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be understanding people for who they are, not the level they're at. And if people would understand that, they would ask lots of questions, and they'd ask a lot of questions, they'd get a lot of knowledge, and then their questions would get better. But because they don't, so they never advance, and they never learn, and they never know, and they get stuck. All because they think that if I ask these questions, the rabbi's going to think X, Y, and Z about me, and I don't want him to think that.
That's with everything asking questions.
Yeah. I mean, same thing in school.
Sitting in the pharmacy, sitting up there, you think you're the only one. Everybody else wants to ask questions, but they feel embarrassed.
Right. Yeah.
It happens for me at conferences all the time.
It's a big mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in yeshiva, the yeshiva would tell us over and over again, there's no such thing as a bad question. There might be an easy answer, but it doesn't make it a bad question. Even if there's an easy answer, there's no bad questions. I mean, I personally have had experience where I've helped individuals through some very low times in their lives. They were going through rough everything, and we were able to get out of it, and they moved on, and they stopped talking to me after that. And I don't blame them. I understand it. I totally get it. I understand that in their minds, I view them at their lowest point forever. And that's how I view them, and they're embarrassed to talk to me. And I get that. I have no complaints. And I tell them, I say, look, if this is how you're thinking, I want you to know it's not the case, but I don't blame you. And it happens, and it's a sad thing. But it certainly can happen. But to be aware, just to get back to your question that you're asking, how do you know if it's right? You're not going to know if you don't ask, unless you really do. Many times you really do. But there are times that you got to ask, and just ask. Don't be afraid. Just ask. All right. Continuing on. V'hine.
Okay.
Okay. V'hine. Zeh ke'avdei hamelach. This system works like the servants of a king. Shekulam amdim l'mashmata. The goal of all of them is to, in a combined way, fulfill all the needs of the king. Ubein kula, or I shouldn't say needs, wants of the king. Ubein kula matzarach shetishtalem avodas malchusay. Through all of them, there should be a completion of all the work that needs to be done. However, the king doesn't just say, okay, I have 10,000 servants, everybody go take care of everything. Right? You don't do that. That's not the way it's going to work. Rather, he gives each one a specific job. Till he gets to the point that between all of their jobs, everything is going to get done. So that means that each individual servant has their specific job that they need to do. And based on the way they do their job, that's how they're going to get their reward. Meaning to say that every person is different and is cut out for different things, has different strengths and different weaknesses. And based on those is going to be the designation of the job that that person has. So if you have somebody who's a good cook, the king is not going to go put